Hey, what's going on, guys? So this video is going to be about scientific claims that the Bible makes thousands of years ago that nobody had any idea about until recently. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I've heard a lot of atheists and evolutionists saying, "Well, you can't falsify the Bible. How are we supposed to test creationism if you can't falsify it?" Well, you can falsify it. If any one of these claims that I'm about to present were wrong, that would be it. Throw the Bible out. It's obviously wrong. But you can falsify it. It just has not been falsified because it is always right every single time. So let's just jump into it. All right, so in Job 26:7, it says, "He stretches out the north over an empty place and hangeth the earth upon nothing." So, in an age where there were myths about the earth resting on the great turtle's back, or a giant is holding up the earth, or whatever the myth may have been, the Bible told us all along that the earth was hanging, it was just floating in space. I mean, how would they have known? They would have never known. In fact, this would have been hard to believe back then. What do you mean he hangs the earth upon nothing? Obviously, nowadays we know gravitational concepts and laws, so we understand how that works. But thousands of years ago, they did not. All right, so there is reference after reference in the Bible. I don't. This is probably not even all of them. About an expanding universe, something we recently found out about. So, all of these verses listed talk about God is stretching out the heavens, and we are just discovering that now today. How did they know this thousands of years ago, especially without a telescope? You know what I'm saying? They couldn't see the stars expanding. So is this proof for a great or a big bang, or is this um, proof that the Bible is prophetic and has been calling things step by step the whole time? All right, so this is an interesting one. The Bible makes this very clear that blood is life. So Leviticus 17:11 says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that maketh the atonement for the soul." So, now where does this tie in? Well, I mean, we used to bloodlet people. We would take blood from them when they were sick because we were thinking, "Oh, we got to get the bad blood out." I'm pretty sure that's how George Washington died, is because we took too much blood from him. But nowadays, we know that blood equals life. So when people are sick, we actually give them blood now. So the Bible's been right about that this whole time too. What do you know? All right, so a spherical shaped earth. There's actually two references for this. It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, says Isaiah 40:22. And when you look at the Hebrew word for circle, it actually implies more of a spherical shape. But then when you look at Job 26:10, there's no question a circle on the face of the waters. There's no question it is talking about a spherical shaped earth. This also would have been hard to believe back then. People used to think the earth was flat. Well, I guess some people still think the earth's flat. But people used to think the earth was flat. So when the Bible's talking about a spherical shaped earth that floats around in space, I mean, we think we live in a time where faith is hard. Imagine hearing this thousands of years ago. You might think, "Oh, you're crazy," but it turns out it was true. Huh. All right, so this is an interesting one. The paths of the sea. It says, "The fowl of the air, the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the sea." So there's this guy, Matthew Murray. I talked about this in my first video, but this guy he read this passage, and he was an oceanographer, and he was like, the paths of the sea, like, what is that supposed to mean? And then he looks into it. He studied the well. He was already an oceanographer, but he started studying it, and he started looking into this, and he found that there actually are paths of the sea. There are underwater currents. So for those of you who say, "Oh, the Bible's not a science textbook," well, here's another scientific claim that the Bible was right about, and actually, this guy discovered this because he was reading the Bible. That's it. The only clue he had for paths of the sea, and that's what made him look into it more, which is pretty crazy to me. All right, so we are not evolving. Oh man, my reference got cut off a little bit here, but all right, so thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all that hosts them. Genesis 2:1. So what this says over here that got cut off, it says animals take forth after their kind. It says that 10 times in the creation story, and then it says it 10 more times in Genesis, in the story of Noah's Ark. I think the Bible did that specifically to make evolution look dumb. All right, so this next slide kind of plays off the first slide a little bit. We're going to look at the next verse in Genesis, Genesis 2:2, which basically says the same thing. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all of his work which he had made. So, this is talking about principles that we didn't have in place until thousands of years later. The conservation of energy and mass. So it's saying there's no new material that is going to come into play here. That it's finished, which is what the Genesis 2:1 in the slide before was also saying. And then it says God is upholding all things in Hebrews 1:3, and by him all things consist. Colossians 1:17. So that's saying that material can't fade out and go away either. So this is this is a concept that we didn't discover until thousands of years later, but the Bible, once again, all along, was telling us, maybe we should start listening to this thing and then basing our science off of that and start testing these things. You say you can't falsify the Bible. Yes, you could. You could easily do it. Start testing some of the stuff it talks about. Well, I meant you could easily do it if it were wrong, but it's not. So, electricity. It talks about electricity thousands of years ago. Job. I believe Job was the first book of the Bible finished, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Job was the first book of the Bible that was written. So this is about as old as text gets, and it's talking about all these scientific claims. Can't thou send lightnings that may go to you, or that may go and say unto thee, here we are? This is talking about lightning carrying a message. This is electricity. I mean, how did they know about this that long ago if the Bible is some book written by crazy people thousands of years ago? How'd they know about all this stuff? They didn't. This is the word of God. We need to start paying attention and actually and being fair when we pay attention, because I mean people don't give the Bible a fair chance because they say it sounds foolish, but the Bible also says that is of the Spirit seems like foolishness to him who does not have the Spirit. So let's give it a fair shot here. The golden mean ratio. I've been talking about doing a video on this for a while now. I just haven't gotten around to it because I think there's more important topics to cover. But it's so interesting. Look up the golden mean ratio. Pause it. Well, actually, don't pause this one because I got a lot of awesome, cool stuff. Look it up after this video, though. It's pretty incredible. So it says, and this the fashion which thou shalt make of it. This is talking about the dimensions of the ark, and also the dimensions of the ark of the covenant follow this golden mean ratio. But the length of the ark shall be 3 cubits, and the breadth shall be 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. Genesis 6:15. It lays out the dimensions of the ark according to this golden mean ratio, which wasn't discovered till thousands of years later. Um, and it turns out the golden mean ratio is everywhere in the universe. Everything follows the golden mean ratio. It's attractive to the eye. It's nice to the ear. We don't know why. We have no idea why. I think God put that in place. Quarantine. So this is another medical kind of thing here. It says, all the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone without the camp. Shall be his habit, or shall his habitation be? And that's in Leviticus 13:46. We all right. So he's saying, take the sick people and make them dwell alone without the camp. It's talking about quarantine. We didn't start quarantining sick people until the 17th century. That's when we discovered that quarantine is a good idea. God's been telling us from the start to do that. You know, we probably would have saved a lot of sick people a lot of heartache if we followed this. So, dinosaurs. This one's interesting. So Job 40:15 through 24 seems to be describing this Bronchiosaurus. He is the chief of the ways of God that made him. Um, oh, excuse me, I can't read. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. So I picked this verse to put in there. I didn't want to put the whole thing in there, but I put this verse in here because what is it implying? It says, "He that made him can make his sword to approach him." It sounds like God saying this animal that I've been describing, and if you look up those references, it's describing a Bronchiosaurus. There's nothing else. It says he has a tail of a cedar tree. It's talking about a Bronchiosaurus. Um, so he that made him can make his sword to approach him. Sounds like God's telling us that dinosaurs are going to be extinct. Turns out they are. Interesting. So the springs of the sea. I covered this in my first video too, but hast thou entered the springs of the sea? Or hast thou walked into the search of the depth? We didn't discover the springs of the sea, and yes, this is something different than the paths of the sea. We didn't discover these until thousands of years later. So how did they write this? Once again, this is Job. Job, there's a lot of scientific claims in Job. It's pretty astonishing, actually. And it's the first book of the Bible completed or written down. I mean, so Job 38:16. Light and wind. This is also from Job 38, verse 24. By what way is light parted, which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? How did they know thousands of years ago that wind got its energy from light? It says, which way is the light parted, which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? How did they know that? It's impossible to have known that. We didn't know that for the longest time. This is incredible. This is incredible. All right, so multitudes of stars. It says that in a blessing, he's talking about Abraham's descendants. That in a blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven. And so it compares the stars of the heaven to, and as the sand which is upon the sea. So it compares the amount of stars to the amount of sand on a beach. or upon the sea, so all the sand in the sea. So it's saying there's this unmeasurable, uncountable amount of stars. Now you might be thinking, who cares? We all know there's a lot of stars. Well, we know there's a lot of stars because we have telescopes. They didn't know how many stars there were thousands of years ago. It might have, I mean, you can see with the naked eye a lot of stars, but not that many. I mean, a couple thousand. That's not compared to the sand upon the sea. But now that we know just how big the universe is, in fact, I mean, I doubt we do know the whole extent of the universe, but now that we know how big the universe is, this now makes sense. It's another thing that might not even make sense to somebody thousands of years ago reading the Bible. What do you mean, the sand upon the sea? There's really not that many stars. Get a telescope. So that's Genesis 22:17. So conclusion to this video: the Bible is falsifiable. It is simply not false. And that is why the father of science himself, Sir Isaac Newton, says atheism is, what's that? Senseless. Senseless. Wow, that's hard to draw with that. Atheism is senseless, and it's really true. There's no naturalistic way to explain the universe. There just isn't. You can claim evolution all you want, but I feel like deep down in your heart, you know that we did not come from a rock billions of years ago. We all hear, if you kiss the frog, it turns into a prince. We all know that's a fairy tale, even starting with long ago and far away. But when they say, given enough time, long ago and far away, billions of years ago, there once was a frog, and given enough time, that frog can turn into a prince. That's modern day science. Makes sense to me, right? But I wanted to address a couple more things. I'm already way past the time limit I gave myself for this video. I do that every time. But so there was a couple Richard Dawkins quotes that made me make this video. He says, first of all, it is not helpful for science to say that there is a creator. I like Richard Dawkins. He's a pretty civil guy. He's very, very intelligent. I've seen him do some debates. He keeps cool, calm, and collected, and he's an interesting guy. But Richard, watch this video. It definitely would have been helpful for science to have been looking at the Bible all this time. It would have saved us a lot of time in scientific research if we just believed the Bible, God's word, from the start, and then started testing our theories, or testing what the Bible says. And that's where we start our research and we test off that. And if that was our foundation, it would have saved us a lot of time, man. Richard also says we shouldn't just throw our hands up in the air and say God did it. I agree. And I understand that ideology that an atheist has. Well, we don't want to just contribute things we don't understand to God. That's not what Christians are doing. We're looking at the evidence. We're looking at the real evidence, the unbiased evidence, which I've never seen an evolution do. They pick and choose what they want to talk about. We're looking at the evidence, and it's proving the Bible. It's not, we're cherry picking evidence and creeping the Bible into that evidence. No, I just gave you 20 minutes of scientific claims the Bible made. Maybe we should be teaching our kids about the glory of God's creation. Because, we'd be further along in science if we'd been doing that. We would. What has evolution brought us? Hundreds of years of confusion and more and more and more problems. The further we get into the theory, the more we understand about genetics and everything else, the more problems we have for the evolutionary theory. This is not helping science. What has evolution brought us? Nothing. Nothing. Hundreds of years of confusion. What has the Bible brought us? Well, about 20 minutes worth of scientific claims, you know? So, I don't know. I guess I'm done ranting, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope I I really hope these videos are a blessing to somebody. I hope that somebody is taking this information and taking it to heart. And I really would like to convert people, but even if I just get one Christian out there to see this video and go, those are some good points, I'm going to share that word with my friends. That's another hope and prayer of mine. So thanks for watching, guys. God bless.